Welcome back to Rapture Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Cynthia Thompson had always trusted her husband, Daniel. They were partners in business and in life, or so she thought. But lately, things had changed. Daniel had been working late, spending endless hours at the office with his new project manager, Vanessa Miller. Vanessa was charming, elegant, and dangerously confident, the kind of woman who smiled with calculated sweetness and always stood too close. Cynthia felt the unease growing in her chest like a slow fire. Daniel's explanations of urgent deadlines no longer sounded convincing. She began noticing faint traces of perfume on his suits, notes of jasmine and sandalwood that weren't hers. The laughter that once filled their home had grown distant, replaced by silence and polite half-smiles. One rainy evening, Cynthia confided in her best friend, Grace Williams, a spirited woman known for her fierce intuition. Grace urged her to confront Daniel, but Cynthia hesitated. She loved him deeply and didn't want to appear paranoid. Still, doubt kept her awake. She began keeping small notes, times, dates, little details that didn't add up. What she didn't know was that Vanessa had already started weaving a darker web, one that stretched beyond flirtation and into obsession. The affair wasn't just about love. It was about replacing Cynthia completely. Vanessa's ambition was relentless. She had admired Daniel for months, studying his weaknesses, learning how to make herself indispensable. When Cynthia invited her for dinner to thank her for helping Daniel at work, Vanessa almost laughed. It was too easy. Cynthia was unknowingly welcoming her own enemy into her home. Throughout the evening, Vanessa played her part flawlessly. Polite and modest, pretending to admire Cynthia's grace while secretly despising it. Every smile hid venom. Every compliment was rehearsed. Later that night, Daniel and Vanessa exchanged secret messages while Cynthia slept beside him. Their affair was emotional manipulation wrapped in secrecy. Daniel convinced himself it was harmless, while Vanessa convinced herself it was destiny. She began imagining herself as Mrs. Vanessa Thompson, rehearsing the title in her mind. But there was still one obstacle standing in her way. Cynthia, and Vanessa never let obstacles stand for long. With each passing day, she grew bolder, and soon her mind wandered from seduction to destruction. She wanted Cynthia gone permanently. The day of the accident began like any other. Cynthia kissed Daniel goodbye and got into her car to visit her mother. The morning was calm, but unease gnawed at her heart. She noticed something strange, a faint metallic scent when she started the engine, but brushed it off. Meanwhile, Vanessa's smile widened at the office as she texted the mechanic she bribed the night before. "It's done. She won't make it far." Her heart raced, not from guilt, but from anticipation. On the highway, Cynthia's world shattered. The brakes failed as she approached an intersection. The car spun violently, glass shattering like rainfall. Her last thought before losing consciousness was Daniel's name. When the police arrived, they found her crushed car against a tree, the engine smoking. The news spread fast. Cynthia Thompson was in critical condition. Daniel was devastated, but Vanessa saw opportunity. As paramedics fought to save Cynthia's life, Vanessa rehearsed her next performance, the grieving family friend. At St. Mary's Hospital, machines hummed around Cynthia's still body. Her face was bruised, her eyes closed, but inside, her mind was awake. She could hear voices, the doctors, the nurses, Daniel's sobs, but she couldn't move. It was as if she were trapped behind glass, screaming with no sound. Days passed, and Daniel rarely left her side. But his guilt soon dulled under Vanessa's comforting presence. She held his hand, whispered reassurance, and subtly replaced the void Cynthia's absence created. Inside her paralyzed body, Cynthia listened. She heard Daniel's voice tremble, heard Grace's prayers, and once, faintly, she heard Vanessa's laugh in the corridor. That sound filled her with silent rage. She tried to move, to cry out, but her limbs refused. The doctor said there was little brain activity, unaware that Cynthia's mind burned with awareness. She was a prisoner in her own body, watching the world shift without her. One evening, Vanessa entered the hospital room alone. Her heels clicked softly on the floor. She looked around, making sure no one was near, then sat beside Cynthia's bed. Her voice dripped with venomous satisfaction. "You were always so perfect, Cynthia," she whispered. "Always smiling, always adored. But Daniel deserved someone better." She leaned close, her perfume filling the air. You should have checked your brakes, darling. But don't worry, you won't feel a thing now. Cynthia's heart thundered in her chest, though her body lay motionless. She heard every word, every cruel syllable. Vanessa smirked and continued, confessing every detail. The payment to mechanic, the plan, the jealousy. Then she kissed Cynthia's forehead mockingly and left. Inside her immobile body, Cynthia screamed silently. That moment changed everything. Fear transformed into fire. If she couldn't speak now, she would find another way. Grace visited daily, bringing flowers and faith. While others began to give up, she refused to believe Cynthia was gone. One afternoon, as she spoke softly about her suspicions of Vanessa, she saw Cynthia's finger twitch. Her breath caught. Was it real? She leaned closer, speaking Cynthia's name again. Another twitch. Tears filled her eyes as she grabbed her phone and recorded the movement. "You're still here," she whispered. "I knew it." But when Grace showed the footage to the doctors, they dismissed it as a muscle reflex. "False hope," one said. Yet Grace knew better. She started watching Vanessa closely, observing how often she appeared at Daniel's side, how quickly she'd taken over Cynthia's life. Grace began documenting everything: times, visits, conversations. If Cynthia couldn't speak, Grace would speak for her. Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator with sharp instincts, was assigned to Cynthia's case after a report of brake tampering. At first, it seemed procedural, but when he saw the inconsistencies, the cut brake lines, the missing maintenance logs, he knew it was sabotage. He interviewed Daniel, who looked broken and confused, but Vanessa's overeagerness raised a suspicion. Her story didn't match the evidence, and her calmness was unsettling. Grace approached Harris privately. She told him about Vanessa's obsession, the hospital visits, the strange confession she'd overheard snippets while passing by the door. Harris took notes carefully. "Don't confront her yet," he warned. "Let's catch her in her own trap." He began surveillance, tracking Vanessa's calls, her accounts, and her meetings. What he found only confirmed the darkness Grace suspected. Inside her motionless body, Cynthia fought every second. Her mind replayed Vanessa's confession endlessly, fueling her will to survive. One afternoon, as Grace held her hand and played her favorite song, Cynthia felt something spark inside, a flicker of control. Her fingers moved again, stronger this time. Grace gasped and pressed the nurse button, shouting for help. The doctors rushed in, skeptical, but the monitor began to spike. "It's real," Grace said through tears. "She's waking up." Daniel watched, torn between hope and guilt. Vanessa, however, froze. Her plan was unraveling. The doctors decided to increase Cynthia's therapy, unaware that Vanessa was already plotting a new way to silence her, permanently. For the first time, Vanessa's confidence cracked. She couldn't sleep, haunted by the possibility that Cynthia had heard her confession. Every beep of a hospital machine sounded like a threat. She tried to convince Daniel to move Cynthia to a private facility, claiming it would be better for her recovery. Daniel agreed reluctantly, but Grace and Detective Harris intervened, insisting the move was suspicious. Under growing pressure, Vanessa made mistakes. She used the same phone number she'd used to contact a mechanic, leaving a digital trail. Harris traced the calls, connecting her to a payment made days before the crash. The walls were closing in. Vanessa's desperation turned her from manipulative to dangerous, and Cynthia's slow recovery was accelerating that transformation. Detective Harris obtained a warrant and raided Vanessa's apartment. Inside, he found documents linking her to a mechanic named Peter Lang. Under questioning, Peter confessed, "She paid me to cut the brakes. Said it was just to scare her, not kill her." The statement solidified the case. Harris still needed more, something irrefutable. Grace volunteered to lure Vanessa into another confession. It was risky, but she was determined. Meanwhile, Cynthia's body began responding to therapy. Her eyelids fluttered for the first time in weeks. Grace visited her afterward and whispered, "Hold on, my friend. Justice is coming." Cynthia couldn't speak yet, but tears slid down her cheeks. Her soul was no longer trapped. It was fighting to return. Late at night, Vanessa entered the hospital again. She moved quietly, clutching a syringe she'd stolen. Her heart pounded as she approached Cynthia's bed. "You just don't know when to die," she muttered. "I can't let you wake up now." She reached for the 4-line, but the door opened. Grace stood there, her phone recording. "What are you doing, Vanessa?" Grace asked, her voice cold and steady. Vanessa froze, caught mid-act. The syringe trembled in her hand. You wouldn't understand, she hissed. Grace stepped forward, eyes blazing. Try me? In that moment, the mask fell. Vanessa's beauty twisted into fury. The confrontation that had been building for months had finally arrived. Vanessa lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. Grace fought back, shouting for help. The struggle sent medical trays crashing to the floor. Nurses rushed in, followed by security. Vanessa was restrained, screaming that Grace was setting her up. But the evidence on Grace's phone, the syringe, Vanessa's words, and her attempt was undeniable. As chaos unfolded, Cynthia's eyes flickered open. Her world swam into view, the lights, the movement, the muffled voices. She gasped weakly, trying to form a word. Grace saw it first. She's awake, she cried. Nurses rushed to her side, adjusting the machines. Vanessa, handcuffed, froze as Cynthia's trembling lips moved. I heard everything. The hospital erupted in shock. Doctor confirmed what Grace had always believed. Cynthia had regained consciousness. Daniel arrived within minutes, tears flooding his face as he saw her awake. He held her hand tightly, whispering apologies, while guilt consumed him. Vanessa's face turned pale as she realized Cynthia's testimony could end her life. Cynthia's voice was weak, but her words were sharp. She confessed. She killed my brakes. The room fell silent. Detective Harris, already en route, ordered Vanessa's arrest for attempted murder. As the officers led her away, Vanessa screamed threats, but Cynthia no longer feared her. She had survived the unthinkable, and her truth had shattered the lies. At the station, Vanessa's arrogance collapsed. Detective Harris played the audio from Grace's phone, followed by Peter's recorded statement. Cornered, she broke down, admitting everything. The affair, the jealousy, the sabotage. Her tears were not remorse. They were defeat. I just wanted his life, she whispered. His love, his home. Everything. Harris stared coldly. You almost got all three over Cynthia's grave. The confession sealed her fate. News of the attempted murder spread across the media. Daniel became a man hated by his own guilt, while Grace became a hero the world didn't know it needed. Vanessa's trial drew public attention. The courtroom was tense as Cynthia, still in a wheelchair, testified. Her calm voice silenced the room. She recounted everything, from the crash to the bedside confession. Daniel couldn't meet her eyes. Vanessa sat motionless, mascara streaked down her face, as the jury listened. The prosecutor presented the recordings and financial evidence. There was no room for doubt. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Cynthia felt no joy, only release. Vanessa screamed as guards led her away. Grace held Cynthia's hand, whispering, "It's over." But Cynthia knew healing would take more than justice. It would take strength. Daniel tried to reconcile, begging for forgiveness. He confessed his affair, his blindness, and his shame. I thought I was helping Vanessa at work, he said. I didn't see what she truly was. Cynthia listened quietly, pain etched across her face. She didn't need revenge. She needed clarity. You didn't just lose me to an accident, Daniel, she said softly. You lost me when you stopped seeing me. Her words broke him. He promised a change, but she had already made her decision. Love, once broken by betrayal, rarely returns unscarred. Cynthia chose peace over pity. Daniel wept as she turned away, not in hatred, but in closure. Weeks passed, and Cynthia's strength grew. Therapy sessions were grueling, but her determination never wavered. Grace stayed by her side, encouraging her every step. Together, they faced a long road of healing, body and soul. The press tried to sensationalize her story, calling her the woman who woke to justice. But Cynthia wanted none of the fame. She just wanted life back. In quiet moments, she would stand by the hospital window, breathing deeply, feeling the warmth of the sun. Every heartbeat reminded her of survival. Every breath reminded her that she had been given a second chance, and she would use it wisely. Cynthia sold the house she once shared with Daniel and moved into a smaller home by the lake. Grace helped her decorate it. Bright colors, open air, no ghosts of the past. They started a foundation supporting victims of domestic betrayal and emotional manipulation. Cynthia turned her pain into purpose, helping others trapped in silence find their voice. Daniel visited once, seeking forgiveness again. Cynthia smiled gently. "I've forgiven you," she said, "but I've also forgiven myself for staying too long." He nodded, tears falling, and walked away. It was the end of one life and the birth of another. Months later, Vanessa's sentencing was broadcast. She received 25 years in prison without parole. As the camera panned to her face, viewers saw not a monster, but a hollow shell of envy and regret. Cynthia watched the broadcast silently. Grace turned to her and asked, "Do you feel free now?" Cynthia exhaled slowly. "Yes," she said, "because she can't touch my peace anymore. Her scars remain, but so did her strength. What Vanessa destroyed, she rebuilt stronger. What Daniel broke, she mended within herself." Cynthia had faced death, betrayal, and injustice, and emerged unshaken. On a quiet morning, Cynthia stood by the lake, feeling the cool breeze against her skin. Grace joined her, smiling. "You know," Grace said, "you're proof that truth always finds its way to the surface." Cynthia nodded, watching the water ripple like her life, disturbed, then calm again. She whispered. She thought I couldn't hear her, but I did, and that's what saved me. Grace smiled softly. "And now," Cynthia's eyes shone with peace, "now I live." The camera of fate pulled away, showing two women standing in the sunlight, proof that even after betrayal and darkness, rebirth is possible. That's the end of the story. What did you learn about the story? Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.